Hello and welcome to the latest in a series of GSA Snapshot Webinars that last for 2022. And in the next 30 minutes, research team are going to dig into the data behind the headlines, behind the 5G stories that shaped 2022 and look forward to what we might be able to expect in 2023, drawing on the data the GSA has collected from across the industry and held in its Gambod database. Before I turn over to Simon to take us through all the data, a couple of bits of housekeeping. We will have time for Q&A at the end. Please do ask questions and pose them as we go through. Got in the background Simon's research team sort of going through questions, and we'll be pushing them to Simon at the end of the presentation. And we'll also do a quick demo of the Gambod database as well at the end. You can download these slides at any point by hovering your mouse over the presentation deck in the frame and click on the download button, and that will download the slides for you. We'll also make them available on GSA websites tomorrow, so please do check back on gsacom.com and you'll be able to download the slides then. And immediately after the event, you'll receive an email with a link to the on-demand recording. And with that, Simon, I'll turn it straight over to you.
Thank you very much, Richard. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm very happy to take you through this presentation around 5G in 2022 and prospects for 2023. My name is Simon Bryant, and I manage the research efforts for GSA Research, and that includes a dedicated team of researchers and analysts that are producing some of the data that I'm going to take you through on this presentation. If you don't know already, GSA Research is supplied exclusively by the research and consulting firm CCS Insight, which is where I wear my other hat, heading up the telecom channel and supply chain research for them. Before I dive into the presentation, I'd like to tell you a little bit about GSA. GSA is and remains the leading association representing the technology and equipment suppliers to the global telecoms industry. As of this year, we have 9 exec members, you can see listed on the left there, and we are really pleased that earlier this year we welcomed MediaTek to this list. At GSA, we produce a lot of research for our members and associates. Members and associates have access to roughly 80 reports published every year, and the Gambod database, which I'll tell you about a little bit later, and I'm going to do a demonstration at the end of this presentation. As well as the research, the GSA has a dedicated spectrum group, as well as a dedicated standards group, and a number of focus working groups, special interest groups, and forums, notably the Fixed Wireless Access Forum, which announced Tech Mahindra as its 50th member just earlier this week, and also the Private Mobile Network Special Interest Group, which announced today, and a press release going out in the next few days, Airspan joining that group, which already consists of Nokia, Huawei, Ericsson, Mavenir, Keysight Technologies, and Private LTE and 5G.com. Before we talk through the data, I want to explain a little bit about the data and where it comes from. So within my research team, we update the Gambod database on a monthly basis, and that is based on dedicated research that the team is conducting across spectrum, across devices, chipsets, public networks, private networks, and operators. And the information from Gambod forms the basis for the 80 reports that I mentioned, which we publish annually. And that covers everything from spectrum auctions to IoT to, we've published a couple of reports this year on 2G, 3G sunset, VONA, VoLTE developments, 5G standalone, CV2X, fixed wireless access, private networks, and much, much more. Next year, we have a plan to increase the amount of information we're publishing via Gambod and the reports and GSA generally. And we're going to announce more about that in the coming weeks and months. And that should be exciting improvements on what we're already delivering, which is already comprehensive. In today's presentation, I'm going to be discussing some of the highlights from 5G's journey over the course of this year. looking at how it's developed across a number of leading indicators and sharing some thoughts as well for the year ahead. So let's look at the data. 5G continues to be rolled out across the world, and we can see from our data that uptake is increasing. By the end of November, as of last week, when we updated our last Gambod update, 514 operators in total were known to be investing in 5G, with 243 commercial services being launched or soft launched, or 47% of that 514. So nearing half. And that has increased from 40 from the end of last year. Whilst it's high, there is still considerable potential for growth. And we expect many operators to move from the investing stage to launching commercial services over the course of the next year. And for a point of comparison, there are 744 launched mobile LTE networks worldwide. So 515 5G, of which 243 have commercial services. In comparison, there's 744 commercial LTE networks already launched. Whilst the pace of launching new services is slowing, the uptake of consumers adopting 5G is accelerating. And this year, according to data from CCS Insight, 5G mobile broadband connections doubled from 0.6 billion to 1.2 billion connections, helped by the availability of services as well as mobile phones supporting 5G becoming more available across different price ranges, and more about that to follow further in this presentation. Whilst much of North America and Europe have already rolled out 5G services, this year in particular saw the launch of 17 new countries launching their first 5G networks. And that includes highly populous countries such as India, Mexico, and Nigeria. And this brings us to a total of 95 countries which now have a commercial deployment of 5G, with a further 60 countries investing in 5G and planning a launch over the next few years. Much of these are across South Asia, Africa, and Central America. So there is still quite a way to go until we have global ubiquitous adoption of 5G services, at least by the carriers. Of course, the launch of 5G services is dependent on the spectrum allocations being made available by local regulators. This year, we have seen a number of auctions for 5G spectrum, with the most high-profile auctions taking place, including the US's 2.5 gigahertz and 3.5 gigahertz auction, also those in South Africa, Belgium, India, and in the Baltics, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. C-band spectrum remains very popular, but low-band spectrum, 700 megahertz specifically, remains the most highly sought after, with the prices bid for this frequency band consistently the highest. Of course, a big trend we're seeing is 2G, 3G technologies being sunsetted, enabling more operators to free up spectrum capacity for 5G rollout. Unlike previous years, millimeter wave auctions this year have been quite muted. They've been quite rare, with just a couple having taken place in 2022 and at much lower values. Next year, we are looking forward to a whole host of new 5G auctions, all of which are tracked within our auction calendar and spectrum pricing reports. Although 5G is advancing, there is still a great deal of development yet for what the industry calls true 5G, or 5G standalone. Based on the latest count, just 22% of the 509 operators are investing in 5G standalone, with 112 operators in 52 countries. Just 37 of these operators have launched public standalone networks in some capacity, including in markets such as North America, Middle East, China, and more recently, India, although coverage is still fairly limited within these countries. Next year, we expect to see a greater number of these tests or trials or investments roll out into more commercial deployments. As well as public standalone networks, We are also reminded of 5G's other benefits for the enterprise networking landscape. Indeed, private standalone networks are also developing, which is something we are looking closely at within our private mobile network special interest group. "5G is more than just mobile broadband for consumers, unlike previous generations. 5G's real potential will be realized by the new use cases it provides, such as fixed wireless access and machine-to-machine IoT communication. These are two areas which are only just starting to be realized, but have lots of potential in terms of the impact and the growth they can bring to this industry going forward. Here at GSA, we have two special interest groups which look at these two spaces, supported by dedicated data gathering, reports, surveys, and industry collaboration. It's no surprise that private mobile networks are growing, and they're growing very strongly. And we see this via our quarterly tracking program within GSA. 2019 was where things really took a big jump in terms of adoption. And that continued in 2020, when the number of customer references by country more than doubled. 2021 also grew, and so there's been 101% compound growth between 2016 and 2021. 2022 has also seen these numbers continuing to rise. We see from our data that the top 3 fastest growing user types in the latest quarterly report were mining, defense and peacekeeping, which had something to do with the events in Ukraine at the moment, and manufacturing. Beyond the last quarter, manufacturing, education, which includes research and development labs, and also mining, remain the top 3 verticals for customer references within our database. But this does not represent the actual size and scale of deployments. What we're looking at within the GSA is the customers of private mobile networks by country, not to be confused with the deployments. Our research shows that as well as customers of private networks growing, the deployments per customer also appears to be growing very strongly. So there's a number of metrics which shows that private mobile networks is a growing industry. Private mobile networks are really now advancing all over the world, especially in countries where we see that dedicated private network spectrum has been deployed, liberalized, such as in the US with CBRS, also Germany and the UK and many other countries. There is a very clear correlation where spectrum has been liberalized and the uptake of private networks are growing the strongest. Although the proportion of 5G deployments makes up a significant number of references, it must be noted that this number skews towards long-term expensive trials and deployments within educational and testbed validation facilities, with a limited number of running real operation in industrial situations. As well as private mobile networks, we also see that 5G fixed wireless access has also really taken off in the last year, with operators now marketing 5G fixed wireless access broadband all across the world. Operators investing in 5G fixed wireless access is up 129% that we saw in our November research since November from the previous year. The majority of fixed wireless access services today remain 4G, with 5G services making up just 19% of launched fixed wireless access services. A large number of operators are still investing in 5G fixed wireless access services, but just 99 have launched. So there's significant headroom in terms of opportunity. Looking forward, we expect LTE-based fixed wireless access connections to be upgraded to 5G. However, we also see that there is some incremental growth to fixed wireless access from 5G, thanks to the additional bandwidth offered by next generation connectivity and a push by some operators with 5G. So with 5G, advertised speeds are, as you'd expect, much faster than what we see in LTE. with the majority being over 500 megabits per second, and even significant number being over 1 gigabit per second, and some 2 gigabits per second. The most advanced examples we've seen show services offering 5 gigabits per second, so significantly higher than we see with LTE services. Of these devices, a wide range support, and coming hand in hand with the growth in fixed wireless access services is the launch in CPE devices and new vendors offering those devices, which we see via our Gambod database. We see the number of 5G devices at 245 at the end of November, up 18% from 1 year before. And of course, beyond CPE, the rollout of more devices supporting 5G is supporting the wider growth of 5G more broadly. We now see over 1,700 5G devices within our Gambod database, and that's across 24 form factors. And that's everything from notebooks, cameras, drones, TVs, even in-car devices, and much more. Mobile phones, as you might expect, represent more than half of the devices announced at 883 based on our last count, and that's up 48% from 1 year earlier. And of these devices, a wide range support a number of different spectrum bands, with C-band spectrum being the most supported, owed to its popularity having been the band of choice by operators in many countries worldwide, followed by 2.5 gigahertz, which is also popular. The majority of 5G devices on the market today support sub-6 gigahertz bands, which represents 83% of the total, with just 10% supporting millimeter wave spectrum. While this number might seem low and hasn't developed much over the last year, this is not the fault of the underlying chipset or modem makers. Many new release 16 chipsets have wider support for more diversified spectrum covering low band, mid band, and high band capabilities. Currently, we see that 49 chipsets and modems support millimeter wave spectrum of the 94 total chipsets we see in Gambod, so more than half. We have seen the advancement of LTE to LTE Advanced and LTE Advanced Pro, but now with the release of 17 and then 18 of the 3GPP standards, we are moving away from 5G Basic to 5G Advanced and the capabilities that will bring. It brings with it a host of new standards and features that come off the back of that, which will really drive new ways of using 5G. Specifically, it will meet more vertical industry needs and specific new radio operation in unlicensed band and NR, MIMO, and V2 everything. These will primarily affect areas such as autonomous vehicles, sensor data aggregation, remote diagnostics and treatments, and private mobile networks. We look at how 5G is and will impact verticals and use cases and specific company examples as well via our ongoing research. Here are 4 very broad but very important verticals when we think about 5G adoption moving forward and key use cases within them. There are many examples we see in the news today around leading companies such as BMW investing in 5G test sites to explore specific Industry 4.0 efficiencies in their manufacturing, or in terms of agriculture, US Vinery enabling agricultural automation with 5G private mobile networks, or the Chinese giant JD Logistics using 5G to power and drive efficiencies across many of its logistics hubs. And also in South Korea, Naver, the technology giant, teaming up with the other Korean technology giant Samsung to deploy 5G robots around its offices in Korea. So many examples driven by 5G automation and technology in leading verticals. Looking forward to next year, we anticipate the 5G will continue licensing and rollouts around the world. However, we are now also beginning to look at 5G expansion spectrum planning underway between 2023 and 2025, as we look to more spectrum to help boost all the new connections and ways we use IMT. In addition to that, early 6G research is beginning and targeting a time frame of 2030. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I'm very happy to take questions. The team have been collecting questions for me. And then I'm going to take you through an example of a few use cases of our Gambod database. Luke, I don't know if you want to.
Thanks very much. So we've had a few questions throughout the presentation, and if you do have any more, please put them in the chat box, but we do have quite a few given the time. The first one is around 5G standalone networks and VONA, and it's kind of asking about the status of VONA around the world. Would you be able to provide anything on anything we have from the GSA on VONA deployments?
Yeah, sure. So we do track VONA within our Gambod database, and I can show you that example when we look at it in a minute. But I think we can check the numbers afterwards, but I think we've documented a little under 10 operators with VONA services to date. And I know that this year saw a few commercial launches, notably, I think, within China and also T-Mobile as well, announcing VONA commitments as well. But I believe there's a number more investing beyond those that have deployed.
Okay, thanks very much. We've got some on kind of the spectrum auctions, and you mentioned some that happened this year. Someone's asking about the kind of notable 5G auctions next year, which kind of those to keep an eye on.
Yeah, so my team have checked into this for me, so I've got a response here, but a whole host of countries are expected to release more 5G spectrum next year. Major economies, including Hong Kong, Netherlands, Pakistan, Canada, Australia, will be next year. Further information can be found in our auction calendar deliverable, which is updated monthly.
Okay, thanks very much. I've had a couple on private mobile networks. The first of those is about are the private mobile network figures that you showed, are they estimates or are they concrete figures from actual deployments that you showed?
Yeah. Happy to explain this, and we sometimes do get these questions around the private mobile network numbers. We are in a really good, strong position with private mobile networks. That the members of the group, which I highlighted earlier, are providing their references of customers of private mobile networks, and it is customers, it's not their deployments. So each customer will probably have, on average, across all customers, 2 deployments per customer. But of the customers, we are getting all of those customers for those companies who are members of the group, and some are anonymized. So it includes their confidential examples that aren't in the public domain, but we don't gross up within this methodology. So we're not grossing anything up. It is the aggregated numbers from those members.
Okay, thanks very much, Simon. And someone else asked about how many countries have private spectrum available. I checked that whilst that question came in, and there are around kind of 18 countries worldwide with dedicated private mobile network spectrum, and that includes those where there is a CSP leasing option as well. And there are many more countries considering allocating spectrum in this way too. And again, that can be found on the GSA website as well. Okay, maybe there's also a question about whether the slides will be available afterwards. I think that's Richard. Is that the case, that the slides will be available afterwards?
Yes, they should be posted on GSA website, I think, tomorrow. Yeah. But people can also download them now if they click over the PowerPoint slide. They should be able to download them.
Okay, great. Yes, there are a few more questions. We don't think we have time to get to if we're going to show a Gambod demo, but we'll be following up with any questions afterwards as well. So apologies if we couldn't get to your questions in the time, but we will follow up with those. Okay, Simon, back to you to show a quick demo then.
Okay, happy to do that. I'm just going to share my screen. And if there's questions about Gambod as I'm showing this to you, by all means, feel free to send those questions and I'll do my best to answer them. Hopefully you can see that okay. So this is the new look Gambod database, which launched earlier this year. You can access it via the main GSA website. And as you can see, this is in the dashboard. You can see we've got just shy of 22,000 4G devices, just shy of, 1,800. We've got just around 1,700 5G devices, and so on. The key numbers are up here. And within these blocks, within the dashboard, you can access each of the databases. And I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of how you might want to use the data. So if I go into the private networks database and click search, you can see up here that we've got 955 private networks deployed. And, to that question that I just answered a minute ago, that includes a lot of confidential. So you can see that there's public examples here where you can click on the press release, but there's around 60% that have been provided by members that are not in the public domain, and they've been anonymized, and certain details have been hidden. But you can look by region and country. So for example, if I wanted to look at examples just within a particular region, let's take Sub-Saharan Africa as an example. We can see that at the moment, we're aware of 12 networks that have deployed in Sub-Saharan Africa. And I can export that to CSV. And that allows you, as the user, if I just open up this screen here, you can analyze that. And that's got all the information in there in terms of the vertical, the sub-vertical, the spectrum band supported where we know it. And you can use that. So that's the private network example. I can also show within public networks. If I start search, you can see that you can segment a little under 1,400 networks globally by the technology they're supporting, features, the regions, frequencies, and various other things. So for example, we could say, I just want to look at LTE-based fixed wireless access services, which shows us there's 485 at the moment. And I might want to look at those operators that have speeds, for example, if we say over 1 gigabyte advertised speed, and that will filter down to 18 networks. Or I could look at 5G fixed wireless access services that support a certain feature like VONA. And let me just get rid of that. And I've done something wrong there, but you get the idea. Let me just, there we go. Anyway, but that's how it would work. Let me go into the devices tab as well. So in here, you've got 23,548 devices. And you've got the vendor, you've got the model, you've got the chipset in many cases, the form factor, the frequencies that are supported by those devices, the fallback support and technology, and whether it is commercially available. So again, here we could just look at 5G devices or LTE devices. We could pick a certain form factor. And again, there are many, many in here. So I can just say, I just want to look at phones, for example. And I might want to look at those that support a certain frequency, such as millimeter wave, and then run the search, and it shows me 48 devices. And again, you could export that if you'd like to a CSV file to do your own analysis. So there's lots and lots of data in here, lots of different analysis that you can do across these different databases. And that's it. And happy to take questions now, or by all means, if you want to follow up with the team, we can do a separate demo for you on the Gambod database. I don't know if there's any questions coming through about Gambod.
Yeah, there's none about Gambod specifically, but actually I think we're at the top of the half hour anyway, so it's probably best we do wrap up. But we've got quite a few questions still that keep coming in, but we will definitely follow up on those after the call today.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Thanks for your attention on this call, and I'll hand back to Richard.
Thank you very much. So all that remains is to say, and thank you for everybody for attending today. Just to recap, after this event, you will receive an email with a link to the on-demand recording. It will also be made available via our YouTube and on the GSA website as well. Please do follow GSA and our social channels on Twitter, LinkedIn, WeChat, and Weibo, and we'll be releasing our calendar, as Simon says, of upcoming research and also upcoming events in the coming weeks. So please do watch out for the research and the events that will be coming from GSA in the new year. And with that, many thanks to you, and many thanks to Simon and the team. And if it's not too early, Happy New Year. Many thanks.